You gotta talk to the bearded lady to start it off.
Yeah, you gotta talk to the bearded lady. Joyous Leaping is a 5-pack emote pack that they are releasing. It's a new item. It's $12. That is brand new in the Final Fantasy store. And all Fantasias and Tales of Adventures, or Heroes Tales, or I think Retainers as well, are a small percentage off. So I think they're 33% off. So if you have been thinking about making an alt, now's the time. $35 gets you through Shadowbringers and level 80. So if you need another alt for something, or you want to create an alt on a different data center, now is the time to make that happen. Other than that, we are expecting a patch release come early January, when the FanFest goes off. So be prepared for that. And that should wrap up the last of the MSQ. And then there will be a... Oh, thank you, Conjured, for that sub. And that should wrap up MSQ until Dawn Trail. And we will probably get a 6 point... Sorry, Conjured. I know, you laugh when I say that. It's fine. It should wrap up and unlock things about a couple months before with a 6.6 or 6.58, I think is what it'll be. That'll unlock the 8-man Savage to be looted every time. No issues there. They might do it sooner, they might not. No announcements as to the Final Fantasy 16 event, and no announcement for the Yokai Watch event, which they have said is coming back as well. As well as, if you haven't gotten any of your Fall Guys stuff, do that in the next couple weeks, because that stuff leaves at the end of the year. So you got about 2 weeks left to get everything you want from the Fall Guys event this round until they bring it back. Bard, do you got anything else for news?
No.
Cool. All right. Well, we will definitely jump right in then. So the good, the bad, the ugly. So for those of you who are living under a rock, thank you, Snuggles. The development team that does Final Fantasy XIV is Business Unit 3. They have been doing Final Fantasy XIV since 1.0. And then they had a branch of group that did 16. So members of the 14 crew ended up working on the 16 stuff. And it's been interesting throughout the time. It's 10-year build from 2.0 to where we are now. Some of the stuff that they've brought in. I think it's telling from at least my perspective the number of years they've had Best Community Award given to them from the Gaming Awards. So I mean, yeah. I think of all of the development teams that do MMOs, there's a lot of positive enforcement that the devs are actually listening. So I think there's some stuff that like we definitely enjoy having them listen to fix anything that's going on. But yeah, so I think some of the stuff we've talked a little bit in the Wraith of the Nine stuff and the stuff that we'd like to see in game. I think what we'll talk kind of about today is more of like the development stuff that I know Gibbles has had some opinions on that we can get into.
I was going to bring up our conversation from I think yesterday and tee you up on a little bit, but I want to have a different conversation just using that as the basis. I want to use that later.
But I think we can see kind of the breadth of what they're capable of being able to do, right, with 16, given a clean slate, a new engine, the whole 9 yards. So I think, you know, that was graphically very pretty. Obviously it's a standalone game, so it doesn't compare to what you'd need for an MMO, but it at least tells us that like they're capable of, you know, these nicer qualities of life builds that we could definitely potentially see in future iterations of 14.
Yeah, well, kind of what I wanted to focus on today specifically is just like the path that they took to get to the point the game's at right now, right? Which it has had so many quality of life changes. And obviously every MMO tries to rip so much from WoW because it was like the big booming thing, and 14 has done the same thing, but has really has pushed so far away from that to this to net now. You see stuff like the last why can't I think of what the WoW convention is called? BlizzCon. The last BlizzCon, yeah, they had 3 DLC announcements, and everyone is looking at that and being like, "Wow, it's Final Fantasy 14, but in WoW." And they've changed and they've learned so much that now it feels like they're not the ones copying from other MMOs. The other MMOs are starting to copy from them, which is a really cool place to be in.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a good place to be in. I don't want them to get complacent, though. I think that's kind of the fear, right? If people start copying your MMO, then it feels like you're doing all the right stuff, and why change what you're doing right? I mean, I want there to be growth within the game. I want things to kind of continue to prosper overall. But I just want to, like, I want that path to continue forward, right? So we've talked about kind of the bigger gripes of, like, the complaints amongst the development team, which is like, oh, we're still dealing with the old spaghetti code. Well, we have to move away from that conversation, right? We have to get to a point where we're no longer bound behind either this old code or, like, we're figuring out how to get past it. Because, I mean, obviously we're making advancements in the game. We're getting quality of life builds, which is nice. Some of the ones that truly come to mind that, we use every day but don't really think about is, like, the maps inside of towns when you're transporting within the town, like knowing exactly where you're going. Sometimes you don't really know, right? Other than maybe like the main cities where it's like, hey, I need to go to the Weavers Guild, so the teleport marked Weavers Guild is the one I'm going to go to, right? So it's, some of those are a lot easier, but like when you get into Kugane and everything's kind of like Pier 3. Well, what's Pier 3? Like, what's the what's the hotel, like, all this stuff or the inn or anything else that comes to mind with that kind of stuff. But having that map was kind of nice. Glamour plates was a huge addition, quality of life, something that we really would like them to expand upon. You get a bit of a taste of that and are able to essentially function an armor set that binds to a gear set. But every time you put on that gear set, it will automatically bind that glamour to that gear set, so that you'll always have the same look. So I mean, it's stuff like that like, it's little, like, even just the little stuff here and there that they bring. I'm looking forward to the visual update from 7.0. And we could pull a little bit of video on that now that we have a new setup that actually runs videos properly. So we can take a little bit of that. I think that's a definite positive from what they've done in 16 to be able to kind of streamline better pixel view and whatnot. So I think that's good. Two-tone dyeing, that's huge, right? Everybody's super excited about two-tone dyeing. I mean, it's gonna be nice to be able to get more customization in this game. And then the game is constantly moving forward. So it's we think about it when it started, right? It was on PC and PS3. They did graphical updates that had to sunset the PS3 edition, but offered free PS4 upgrades. So if you had it owned for PS3, you got a free PS4 upgrade, and you could start playing it on PS4. And then, when the PS5 came out and they moved to 4K rendering, or they moved to the ability to do 4K rendering, they added a free PS5 edition for those who owned PS4, so they could get them moved up. So I think that's like that's kind of things that I'm pleased to see, where a lot of games would be like, oh, we could just charge you another game fee. They're understanding that the game's already been paid for once, and the content doesn't change, so to speak, other than it's patch to patch. But then they're still being able to push that forward. But and then it makes me look at things like WoW and Guild Wars 2 or Guild Wars 1, where you're not getting those shader updates, those the graphical updates. It's relatively the same. We're still looking at polygon view, and we look at WoW, right? I mean, that game is 20 something years old. And in a lot of people's eyes, it's time for it to go.
I'm kind of on there. Like to me, I never really played WoW, so to me it looks like I'm playing Spyro when I'm looking at it.
Legitimately, it reminds me of old. Hey, Jer. It reminds me of old Warcraft 3, like playing the RTS.
So one thing I wanted to like, kind of like, because I want this to be kind of a feel good episode a little bit more. So on like, give a little more hype because there's so much bad drama, because especially since we're in a expansion change, so everyone's just constantly drowning on about content drought. But like the monumental task of even adding extra die zones, let alone the graphic update, just adding extra die zones to every piece of gear. That is not just like one line of code to every piece of gear and you can just copy paste it. That's like multiple lines of code to every piece of gear. That is new assets having to be added to every single piece of gear that they're doing that with, because you have to add different asset zones in order to now allow that piece and the different sections of that piece to be dyeable, and like the way it changes it is. And if you think about how many pieces of gear we have in this game, right, it's been going for 10 years, and every 2 to 4 months they add in like 3 armor sets, right, with like the raid, the dungeons, the 24 mans, whatever. It is so much gear, that is so much code, that is so many assets. It is an exponential equation that they tasked on. And I just wanted to like that it's great that they're adding it. It's amazing that they're adding it. And that is the easier thing than the graphical update and all of the texture rendering differences of like I know that I believe they said not every zone will have the texture update, I think, right?
First, not to start. Yeah. They're gonna go back and do it. They're gonna basically do what they did with trials, or not trials.
The dungeon, the duty support.
The duty support, right?
Yeah.
That they're soloing, which is still huge, which is another huge thing, right?
Yeah. It's every rock, every set of every like, so like I mean like sections of grass are going to be like a tile that they recycle every now and then, right? But that each of those, there's going to be more than one tile that they use in like their pattern, right? So they're going to have to like change all of that. Every rock is going to have texture. Every the wall that you have, the tile floors in this room, like all the assets that they created previously, essentially every graphic bit that went into all these other expansions, all the graphic budget, whatever of the map design, they have to spend essentially that again in order to create a graphics update, which is huge.
Absolutely, and that's a big deal. I don't want to undersell that by any stretch, because that is being able to push out an expansion on top of everything else, and then do a big graphical update and to get both a 2-die window, a 2-die view on each armor, and a graphical update is massive. I mean, that's a lot to undertake. It shows that they've been taking the time to kind of do the right thing. I think the testing that they're doing with cloud data centers is going to bear fruit very quickly for them. I think that they're going to realize that they can just spin up copies, and then I wouldn't be surprised if we get cross-region traffic soon, so that we can do EU and US and NA based traffic, at the very least. I know that they're withholding because of cultural differences, but I think the NA and the EU are so similar that it would make sense, and maybe Oceanic, or some of the Australian Oceanic stuff would be nice to be able to just lump those 3 in, so that those groups can commingle, where a lot of those social groups are the same. But I think it's also going to make a huge difference for people playing the game, right? You're going to get people who are going to move more to the servers that are best fit for their ping, and then I think the rating,
cross-region party finder and duty finder. That's something that I think is going to, especially if we can get that with the offload from these extra servers, that would 100% just remake the way you see your server 100%.
Yep. Yeah, you could stay on your server and then still be able to party find with raid like you do when you move to Aether right now, which is a topic of discussion.
I could actually build my FC instead of spending all of my time on Aether instead of in Dynamis.
Right. Yeah, I definitely think we need to do something, right? It's definitely doesn't feel good overall. But yeah, so I think it's a lot that they're bringing on. Are there some pitfalls that we deal with? Absolutely, 100%. We definitely have gripes about things that we'd like to see or that could be done better. I know Bard has some issues with the way that raid is kind of done in its fashion, that there's not really a system to really help players learn the mechanics inside the game. They're forced to leave the game. We'll get into that in a little bit. But yeah, I think overall, I think that there is a lot of passion in those teams, in those groups, and yeah.
Yeah, so I kind of want to start with like definitely we can get to like what they can learn from currently and push forward, and we already know that there is things that they're going to be doing, but I kind of want to start at the beginning a little bit, like just like talk through this, because 100% a lot of the problems that they've faced have been leftovers from 1.0, right? Belts being a thing, and like, well, like I liked belts, I understand, 100% agree, like it was, you don't need that extra spot, like it wasn't visually used, it wasn't it just took up an extra spot pretty much of gear, and so that's something that they fixed. It took them a long time to remove those, because it wasn't even until Shadowbringers they did that. So but there's still other hangups and leftovers from 1.0 and what they tried to do back in the day. Like, so in A Realm Reborn, when there was like you had the elemental resistances. I don't know if you remember, you actually had for the first I think for the first 30 levels, or it was like weirdly incremental, you actually had ability points that you could assign in A Realm Reborn. I don't know if anyone remembers that. And then you could buy these stone tablets from the Grand Company to reset your ability points. So
there was also min-maxing with your race. Your race had base stats.
Yeah, race had base stats. The gods you picked had like actually effect on some of your stats, as well as your as well as its ability points. And like if you wanted to be like really high end and you wanted to swap the main class you had to go back in and swap your main the ability scores that you put in. I think you got like 15 ability points. It was something like that, which like back in the day that was a decent amount. I don't have a level 50 piece of equipment on me to like in my character in game. I don't think that I could pull up, but so say if like you were trying to play ninja and you put those all in the decks, and then you go and you want to play black mage into a raid instead, you had to swap those into intelligence. It's a really interesting thing, and I really like the way because they already had this in the game of swapping, being able to all classes on one character, as opposed to a lot of other MMOs where you have, oh, I got 15 different characters I play because I like playing these other classes, and learning that, hey, this is a barrier, let's remove it.
Yep. So I pulled in and was trying to do a quick search for some quality of life changes, like if somebody had a big list of them. I'll read some of these, and we'll go through all of them, but some of the bigger ones I think are worth mentioning, right? So somebody said, I remember when debuffs didn't show whether they could be Asunit or not. You know how many new players take for granted that the blue bar above a debuff just means that you can Asunit it, and it didn't always used to be that way. Like these are like some big things. No longer having to put your chocobo away when you queue for a dungeon, because it used to cancel the moment you used to queue if you had your chocobo out, or you brought it out while you were in queue. let's see, cooldowns upon reset wipes. So in A8S, after we died, if the paladin used hallowed ground, everybody just took 5 minutes for it to reset. That's like, these are small things, right? But they're definitely stuff that we feel. Graded glamour prisms. So we have one glamour prism to do all glamours. But it didn't used to be that way. You used to have to use the right grade of glamour prism to make things work. So that is a huge quality of life change. Changing jobs outside of sanctuaries used to mean waiting over a minute for all of your actions to cool down.
Oh, I had one right now as well that was like big. Spirit bind. If you wanted to retrieve material or extract materia from a piece of equipment, it destroyed that piece of equipment originally.
Yeah.
So the way people farmed materia, and this is one of the big ways that people used bots to farm materia, is they would just have someone in gear and it would just have like a bot black mage just like kill like lower level enemies until their gear 100% spirit bound, and then it would just swap gear and destroy that piece of equipment to a materia.
Yeah, some of the other.
What I mean, like there's changes they did that they've implemented that then they realized were bad mistakes. I mean, like, so I mean, I was there as a healer in Gordian with cleric stance, and I remember so often like being like, oh, like trying to damage and being like, oh shit, I need to heal this this tank, and then maybe I didn't have cleric stance on, or I was about to go back into damage, and the tank got hit with something really hard, and I was like, oh shit, I gotta do that, and I accidentally hit cleric stance, and then now, well, I have to wait 3 seconds before I can actually heal you. Diadem in that time, I feel like Diadem, I think, is the like pivotal thing to think about of them learning from their mistakes, because Diadem has been in the game, I think, 3 separate times now, in different instances. It wasn't always the gathering zone that it is now. It was different exploration zones. It was originally the idea of what Eureka and Baja eventually became. And even still, they're learning from that too. And like, if from Eureka to Baja, they made improvements as well.
The actual party finder. Party finder has not always been there. You used to have to stand in towns and yell when you wanted to do something. It is not a new system, but it's not an original system. Weekly tome caps. So we have people complain now that the 450 tome cap lift is too little, right? It used to be 300. It used to take you 3 weeks to get a body piece. Oh man.
And natural progression for the game is that more tomes have come out and stuff like that. But I think it's a great thing, just in general, that they've left Poetics just there and have continued to leave it as Poetics the whole time, because Poetics was the last tomestone from Aroma Born. So like, what is it, comedy right now? Poetics was the comedy from Aroma Born, and the fact that they've left that the same is, like, as expansion to expansion has been great, because like I don't need to spend anything going into the next expansion. I at least have an extra 2,000 Poetics that I can spend right when 7.0 drops if I just didn't happen to gear someone.
Currency menu, because currency used to be part of your character menu. So all of the currency that we take in, the tomes and everything else, the crafting tomes, the gathering tomes, the purple crafting script, all that stuff, that used to be in the character menu, and now it is its own menu, which is awesome. Let's see. Market boards didn't used to have partial matching. You used to have to spell that perfectly every time in order to be able to get your search to go through.
It also didn't have as many like filter options too, because like right now you can filter for so many things. It didn't always have as many as it does today.
Right.
Another the tribes, right? The tribe quests and things like that. They learned that, oh hey, people want tribes as a way to do for gathering and for crafting. They didn't have them, right? A Roman Born has what is it, 5 tribes? Or is it 6? Every single it's not a single one. It's 5 tribes, yeah. Not a single one is a crafting one, and then they added a crafting one, and then they took them like 2 expansions, but then they 2 more expansions, but then they added a gathering one.
Let's see, the removal of TP. That was great.
That one's a little controversial. I know some people like TP. I mean, like TP being tied to sprint, I think was the big problem. And like people still have a problem with like if you're a melee and you have an MP bar and you have no skills that use MP, right? And it kind of goes back to like the same issue of like what TP was or something like that. And I think that's something they could definitely learn from still, and go forward with that as well. Is like a skills costing a resource. Well, like your AoEs were like the thing that killed your TP back in the day, besides sprinting. But but they have fixed that with every class having a separate resource, right? They've created they've created a resource bar. It's almost the same thing as TP. It just serves a different function. It's still a resource that you have to manage.
Each class has its own. Speaking of classes, the removal of subclassing requirements to be able to get your job stone. That is a huge one.
And that's back in the day, hangover from 1.0 and from 11.
Back in the day, in order to be able to unlock warrior, you needed what was it, 15 levels of white mage?
No. Paladin was 15 levels of white mage. Warrior was 15 levels of dragoon.
That's right. So 15 levels of dragoon and then 30 levels of marauder to be able to get warrior.
Yeah, every class had one. Bard was also a lot of them were conjurer. You needed 15 levels of conjurer. Pugilist was also one that you had to use quite. I think you had to. You needed 15 levels of archer. And I think same with dragoon. You needed 15 levels. It was either no. I think warrior and dragoon had like the swap. They both needed 15 levels of each other, of the marauder and the and the lancer.
Yep.
But hey, paladin using protect and stone skin. That's another thing. Before at every single thing you ever did, you had to stop and wait for the healer to cast protect and stone skin. And while you didn't need stone skin 100%, you needed to wait for protect. If you don't, so protect used to be a 30-minute buff. It lasted even through death. It just lasted 30 minutes. No, sorry. If you died, you did have to get it rehashed on you. And so like if you rezzed, the next thing you had to do when someone rezzed in combat was cast protect. And it just reduced all damage you took by 10%. And so it was just an unnecessary thing. Everything all they did was just tune back everything. Everything's damage by 10% and then removed the skill. And it was effectively the same, but with a less of a step of having to cast protect right before combat.
Yep.
And stone skin was essentially worked kind of like Blackest Night, where it was essentially a shield that would eat, I think it was like 20% of your max HP, and then it could not be cast in combat. So you started combat with stone skin, and then everyone just had that extra shield going into the beginning of the fight. Both those things are gone now because there was just extra steps that didn't need to be there, and they could have just tuned the fights as if those things were always there. Which is what they do now.
Nice. So yeah, let's I think one of the biggest things I think we can talk about tonight is kind of the pitfalls, right? Some of the stuff that they've done, maybe not enough. Some stuff that's coming that would be better. The raid planner is a big thing that's coming. That's going to be
So I'm gonna tee you up on this because I actually want to talk about this for a little bit, and I want to use our conversation last night. So on my stream last night, we were talking about this because I cleared P11 and then I wanted to go into P12. So I wanted to just like do some practice. I watched the video, I got everything together, and then I started to go do Party Finder, and then all of a sudden I'm reading all these things that did not exist in any video I watched, did not, and no other content had like this in it. And all of a sudden I'm having to use 3-4 extra outside sites to have to understand this. Like I know Raid Planner exists, and I know FF Logs exists, and I know I can watch like Hector Hectorson's videos, and then all of a sudden I load up P12 and it's pastebin. What the hell is pastebin? It takes me 30 minutes of Googling to find out what pastebin is. And then I find another like acronym in it, and I'm like, what the hell does this acronym mean? And that takes me like another 20 minutes, and I even asked someone in game, and then the answer they gave me, I was like, what the fuck does that mean? It took me another 20 minutes to find that. And so 100%, and I'm gonna cue this up with barriers of entry. Every single time you make someone leave your game or leave to another site, you're creating a barrier of entry that is going to filter some people out. And if we want a lot of people, we want the community to grow, we want the community to be there, right? And so we want to bring as many people into raiding as possible. That doesn't mean make it easier, right? It doesn't mean make it easy and then everyone can do the content. That just means make the barriers, have less barriers of entry so that more people can pass them into trying the content. And every single time having, oh, I got to go to Pastebin. Oh, and then in Pastebin there's raid logs, and then there was another site as well. I don't even remember what the other site was in the Pastebin that showed like the strats and like the instant. This is something that is the community, while is a good thing the community has done by creating these sites, creating these guides to do these things. That's a good thing. Has been implemented well? No, because it's a clusterfuck of random people trying to get it done, and there's no communication. Besides just, hey, this works, here you go. And it eventually filters down to what we have now, but it is something created by the devs not supplying that in game. And now I'm going to kick it back to you because they're trying to implement something into the game, and I don't know anything about this except that I've heard that they're doing it. So
yeah, so let me so it's essentially basically you pick the fight, and then it gives you the arena, and it gives you markers, and kind of gives you a mini boss that you can move around. Let me see if I can find any images of what they're doing with it, because they showed it off a little bit during and raid planner. But it's basically a spot where you can essentially plan out a fight from start to finish. Let me see.
It was Toolbox Gaming. That was the other website that I had to go to.
Yeah, they're calling it strategy board. That's what they're calling it.
Ah.
It hasn't been finalized yet. Strat.
I know a lot of people are calling for something similar to like a simulation like ability to go through, so you can like try and practice a fight without like maybe some damage, so you can see the mechanics a little bit easier. And some people like are shouting no, we don't want that, but then I think the happy medium is just like release that late, kind of like how we released the 24-man gear late to help people push through.
Hello, Leone here, and welcome back to another video. Today I want
I want to find the spot where they show it off. Characters.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that's being like what the developers want, and there's money behind it, so it's obviously it's more likely to be better than the community throwing shit at the wall until something sticks.
Yep. I mean, I can show this. Of course not. Why would it just open it? Okay, I'll show this because this is it's real little. All right. Basically, you'll be able to essentially set up where your markers are on the map, and it'll be something that you can send to other people. So there's a collaborate button is what they got. So you can basically collaborate with your team. They haven't really explained how it's all going to work out, but each of these on this side is a different strat for a different portion of the fight, right? So you have, it tells you where people need to stand. It tells you where the markers are going to be. It tells you how the damage is being issued out. So a lot of us have questions of will the fight show these things, right? Will it show, like, if I go in and I say I want to see this portion of the fight, will it show the attack outs and where you would stand? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I go still ever expanding. Whoop.
I wonder if it might be like adjustable, like cone. If they'll just like give you the ability to input them yourself.
Yeah.
Like and like it'll just give you like cones, donuts, and circle AoEs, and then like be like, here, you input them where you see them coming from, so that you can try and figure it out. Because at the same time they've said they don't want to, like, they want you to figure out the fight on your own.
Yeah, they don't want to hand you the win, right? That's the big one.
Yeah. So I'm wondering if, like, this, what we're seeing right here, where it has the circle in the center and then it has the cones coming out on all four sides, if that's just assets that they give in that little box, and then you place them how they go.
Yeah, I have a feeling that's probably how it is, but yeah, that's kind of how that's what they've shown off from the live letter that they had during, or the development event that they had during the fan fest. So
that's one thing that I think it's really nice about the team, is like to think about, is all the live letters they do, all the streams they do, and then this is something that I get, like, it's a good thing to feel not that they're being complacent, even if they, like we said at the beginning of the stream, right? If they're ahead, then there's issues of being complacent.
I think this shows a lot of positivity because like Genshin has their like patch review, right? But it's two random hosts that are just employed by the company that makes Genshin, right? This is legitimately the director and head producer of the game sitting down and talking to you about what the game is bringing, right? No other game is doing that, where the director is taking the time to tell you, hey, this is what we're bringing to the game. This is what we're adding for you.
I mean, you do have some games trying to do that, like Diablo 4 has been trying to do that, but they've been doing it in a way that's just been getting them in more and more hot water.
But yeah,
overall, so I wasn't around for Shadowbringers. I don't know if they released anything in Shadowbringers that people were like absolutely like annoyed about. And I know, like, so like when it comes to rating, I know everyone, like, the community feedback when it came to Gordian, like, it changed how rating was developed in the game from there on. And in Heavens, and again in Heavens, where Diadem was released and it was a crapshoot, and they released it again, and then the RNG was horrible, and it like relied on this and that, too many things, so then they crapshooted that, and then it eventually became Eureka, even though like Diadem's out now as the Gathering, but the first and second forms of Diadem eventually became Eureka, and they learned from Eureka and Stormblood. Like, was there anything that's like you can like pinpoint from Shadowbringers that they learned from and carried over into Endwalker?
Can't think of anything like game mechanic wise. I think that like the problem that people had with Stormblood and why it's on the bottom of a lot of people's list, other than maybe ARR, is that it was too much story. It was almost two stories that should have been split, and there were no real compelling characters that you were attached to that potentially died throughout the series that like really kind of tugged at your heartstrings in any way. There wasn't like a Harshaphant or a Mumbrita or, you know, something that like people like really drew themselves to because the character was so compelling and you know, it just was too busy.
Ishtola's mandatory per expansion
death, but she has to die. Yeah. Spoilers. Ishtola dies a lot and comes back to life a lot.
I will say, actual spoiler warning right here. I'm going to be talking about something that happens at the very end of the actual Endwalker like expansion pre-patches. I personally feel like the game that expansion has such a heavy tone to it that I really feel like someone shouldn't have walked out of there. We shouldn't have all walked away. And I don't know if that's something there. I know this next expansion is supposed to be the lighter one, so I don't expect it from this next expansion, but maybe in that expansion's patch or the next one, I feel like there needs to be another Papalimo.
Papalimo is not dead. No, I knew you were gonna say that. Papalimo is not dead. There was no body. He's alive. He's just hiding somewhere.
We need it. We need him in Philia. We need a Harshaphant, a Moonbrita, a Papalimo. Like something needs to happen. Now you just said that we missed that, right? There needs to be. We need the stakes while like the stakes are high, right? There's still this weird thing of like, yeah, the stakes are high, but nobody actually like, did anything actually happen that was like
characters have to start losing limbs again. We have to it's an interesting piece, right? I mean, I'm interested to see what they're gonna do with this. There's only so much lightheartedness you can bring before you have to bring conflict, right? So an expansion has to have conflict. There's gonna have to be something that drives them through. I think they did a good job. My problem with, again, hard spoilers here. These are spoilers for the game, so if you have not finished the end of the Endwalker game, please mute or come back in 5 minutes to be a part of that conversation. I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but the fact that they bring that they added people to the trust system and then they're like the first ones to die, to me was like an instant like there's no way they're actually dead. There's just no way. Like something's gonna happen. It's gonna bring them all back. Like at some point you go like, oh, like I mean, other than like Thancred dies first, right? Obviously, but then like, you know, Estinian is
like
next.
Of them, he was the one who should have. I felt like his story had concluded to a good point.
Yeah.
That he probably could have stayed gone. So since how long he was in the story gone compared to the rest of them.
My thought though is like you bring in Estinian this expansion as a trust, and then you're gonna kill him this expansion. That to me was like that was where it didn't add, right? Like why would you take the time to add them as a trust if you're literally just going to kill them?
I really want to call back to Square's roots in their storytelling and the bittersweet ending. I mean, they did it in 16, right? I because I grew up with games that were we won, but at what cost?
Right.
I've liked that storytelling aspect in 14 when they've done it, but I feel like I missed that in Endwalker a little bit.
I mean, here's the question though. Like, yeah, you go back to those roots of like, you know, your Aeriths dying and whatnot. Like those are big deals, and I'm not gonna hashtag spoiler that because that game's been out for forever. If you don't know that Aerith dies, then I'm sorry. Like, stop living under a rock.
It became a meme for a little while.
It was a meme for a really long time. But I think like the bittersweetness within a Final Fantasy becomes hard where we live in a world of DLC, right? So like again, big spoil. We need to put like I need to have a spoiler tag thing that goes above our heads whenever we're talking about spoiler crap. But big spoilers for 16. It is generally believed that the main character dies at the end of 16, given everything that happened and whatnot, but they've already said that there's going to be DLC. So how do you explain DLC when the end of the game is your character's dead? Like,
because when you beat the game, you restart right before that point, and the DLC just happens in the game.
Yeah, but it's such a break of immersion at that point that like.
I mean, you after you beat the game, you restart if you missed anything, and before you beat the game, you just restart right before the final fight. A lot of games do this. They just restart you right before the final fight, and then like, okay, yeah, you beat the game, cool, there you go, blah blah, and then but you're still right before the final fight again when you reload the game, and then I missed some stuff. I didn't go do some stuff. Let me go make sure I get that done now.
I guess with such a climactic ending, it's just hard to feel that way.
I feel like
a lot of games do that. I mean, Dark Souls gives you the option to move forward into your new game plus after you've beaten the game, but that's a little bit different. Like, it's not like your character doesn't necessarily die. They've just, however you ended that game for yourself. That's one I'm not gonna hashtag spoil. But yeah, it's I don't know. It's just one of those things that like I feel like you get to a point where like we live in such a media frenzy of like, oh, you gotta add DLC. Like, how are you keeping your viewers engaged in your game if you're not adding DLC? So, but yeah, I don't know. I that's the part of the current expansion that kind of hit me a bit, because it was like, oh, you're gonna kill characters and then they're just gonna come back. Cool. Like death isn't even a construct at this point. Like, you're just gonna come back to life. Got it.
Yeah. That doesn't mean like the stakes were high, but like the stake, like, because we did watch actual characters actually die. We watched like there was like we watched the baby. It's still hashtag spoilers. We watched like the baby. Absolutely, like 100%. Teeter on it. We watched the parents die. There was like the kid that got like stepped on after he transformed, right?
Right.
There was a lot of stakes. You could see the stakes, but then when it came to actually important characters, it was the force. They were force sensitive, right? They had the Star Wars. They had plot armor.
That's the wording I was gonna say. I was like,
yeah,
they got plot armor.
Yeah.
Where like, we need them. They can't die. We need them. But like, I had hopes that there would be doing something with this X-Pack, given that like you had the scene where like everything was changing, right? You had people actually dying. So I mean, I'm gonna try not to spoil for those that know that, if you know, kind of a deal. If you've been to Endwalker, you should know the scene I'm talking about. But yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see what Dawn Trail can do. It's we keep playing this like roller coaster of up right now, right?
I don't think Dawn Trail needs to have that bittersweet ending. I don't think it needs to have. They can create other stakes besides people are dying. Going into the post Dawn Trail, the patches, the 7.1s to 5,
someone's
whatever.
Gotta die in patches. That's. I'm just kidding.
Papalimo died in a patch. Moonbrita died. Yeah, wait. Did Moonbrita died in patch? So I mean, like, I feel like the deaths actually happen in patches. I mean, except for Hodgefont. but I feel like definitely I don't think Dawn Trail needs to have that super dark, gritty. I mean, we've had it the last. I mean, every expansion has been war. We started with like we have Harchefant dying. There's a war going on. We're kicking off a civil war in the middle of that, and we're running on the loose for our lives, and we're in this dark, cold climate. And then let's go start a revolution and fight in a war, and it's this gritty. And then oh my god, the world's ending. And then again, oh my god, the world's ending. And like both expansions start with like this like crazy, like you watch someone die. That's another problem I have with Shadowbringers. Like we start with Tesleen, it's so impactful, and then I feel like it falls off a little bit when it comes to stuff like that. And I feel like they really should have carried that. Like how Endwalker did carry that, but I don't think we need that for Dawn Trail. I think like UHP saying this is our vacation expansion, right? This is the section of the game where of like other previous Final Fantasy games where like, hey, it's the beach episode section, right? I feel like that's fine. Yeah, beach episode. There you go. Episode. I feel like that's fine. You can have other stakes.
We're gonna
right?
resort,
like,
guys. We're gonna resort and just chill.
Now, I mean, I understand we're like the Warrior of Light. I mean, even like it's like we like to fight. We're here for an adventure. Like that can be the stakes. We're here to have an adventure. We're here to we can have stakes of like affecting, because it seems like just based off the trailers. So I'm not gonna really hashtag spoiler this, but because it's the trailers, and it seems like we're going to be affecting like the politics of where we're going. That can be the stakes,
the
but we don't need
split into two. They've already said that that Scions will be pitted against Scions.
Yeah, and that seems that can have like some little bit of heaviness, but I don't think it'll be. I think it's going to be like we're split into two. I don't think it's going to be as hard as like Civil War, Captain America Civil War kind of thing.
Right.
It's not going to be like I don't think it'll be that hard. We're not going to be like actually like death threatening each other. But I feel like we'll definitely be affecting things separately. And that's a cool way to do it, right? And I don't think we need these heavy stakes, but I do think after the expansion, maybe in the patches, maybe in 8.0, they bring in that back would be and don't gotta commit, right?
Yep.
Gotta commit to those deaths. Don't give us come 8.0. Don't try and kill Istola off again. I mean, like you can, but actually kill her this time.
Just actually kill her. Get her out of her misery already. God.
Yeah, like that.
She already can't see real things. God
yeah,
dang.
don't fake us out. The next time something like that happens, which I think there should be something like that to happen, commit through it. Don't fake us out.
100%. Yeah. So I think
involved.
Yeah, commit. So I think the big things are, so I just to kind of create a little bit of chaos here, I am not in agreement with Gibbles' conversation about raid, and the moment you have to leave is the moment that broken the game kind of a deal. Because to me, I think the game doesn't want you to know the answer right away, right? They kind of want people to go in blind. They kind of want them to figure it all out. And there are a lot of people who just don't want to do that when it comes to savage raiding. So there are definitely lingos and slangs that, definitely take a little bit of time to get used to. But I think I think it's all about how you're brought in on the experience. I like to bring players in where I talk to them about like what things are what and why it's called that and stuff like that, and I think it gives them a better view of things. If you're just jumping into it on your own, just as a solo party finder thing, it definitely can be intimidating, for sure, 100%. But I until the game, I think the biggest one of the biggest pieces I took away from the conversation piece is like, well, it's not the devs' fault that the community has decided to use these shorthands. And I was like, well, I mean, it kind of is, because if I could have more characters in my description, then I would actually be able to describe them out versus having to shorthand them so that I can get everything in, right? So
my thing on like the like every barrier of entry being created is is a community created problem, is in my statement, right?
Yeah.
This is a community, like, well, it has, because we're crowdsourcing it and there's so many people in it, it starts as, well, here's 1,000 solutions, and then it slowly whittles down, right? And even still, the solutions are way too much. But that problem is created by not having an in-game tool. And that in-game tool not existing is already the first barrier of entry. The devs are only creating one barrier of entry, and it's just not supplying the tools, which they're remedying already. They're working towards remedying it. It's not perfect, right? I mean, it's not even implemented yet, so we can't even say it's 50% perfect. But the instant you give it to the community, right, we're all headless chickens always, right? We're dogs chasing cars. We have no idea what we're gonna do when we catch it, and we gotta funnel it all in together. And the community has been working on doing that, but it's not perfect, right? And it's a solution that can be solved by the developers giving us those tools. And it's not going to be perfectly solved because nothing's perfect.
Right. Yeah. Like I said, when we were talking, it was like, well, what's pastebin? And I was like, he's like, I figured it out, but it's like for somebody who's walking in, like, who doesn't know pastebin, like, and the ironic part is like my static leader doesn't do the strats for us. We have somebody else in our team that does the strats for my E12 static, and he was like, so you keep telling me to put pastebin into my party finder, and I don't even know what that is. Like, we've been doing this fight for 3 months, and like, yeah, the other day he was like, I don't even know what pastebin is. And our healer, who's the one that does all of our strats, is like, all the strats that we do are a part of that pastebin. Like, the ones that we've been teaching you are all part of that pastebin. So it's like, the pastebin is basically a big text document that people utilize to be able to tell what strats they're going to use for each particular thing, right? So generally speaking, when we put up party finders, for those who aren't aware, we put up party finders, we mark them with the committed strats that we're expecting the team to know or expecting them to do. So for instance, P9S, which is Pandemonium 9 Savage, Pandemonium 9 Savage, we use what's called JP strat, so it's LC or limit cut JP, which is the 11 strike limit cut section. There's 2 of them, and so we say we're using JP strats, so that when people go online and they see other strats, they'll be like, oh, this one's marked JP, this is the one people are using. There was Oppo strat for a little bit, people utilizing Oppo for a short period of time, and then you get situations, and then it breaks down, so it's like it's JP strat, and then we do clockwise support rotation or clockwise support rotation. It just tells like the supports that they're going to be rotating whenever we're doing partners and stuff like that. So it's
sorry, I just thought of something while you were saying this, and I think it'd be an amazing thing is to marry the party finder with the strategy planner guide thing, or the party finder and the strategy planner, so that like
I'm sure that's what they're planning. That
you can click, okay, what strats are these people doing, and you can click it and you can see their strategy guide. That would be amazing.
Yep, I would expect that would be part of it for PFs for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's basically like, even if you are progged to the point that you're utilizing a strat that's on the description, you generally describe out all the strats you're expecting to use, so that if you prog to that point, you at least have a point of knowledge of saying, hey, we're using this strat. So it's definitely not perfect, right? So that's kind of the biggest issue, is it's definitely not perfect in any way, shape, or form. But I think it's still kind of, I can understand that there's like a barrier of entry when you have to leave a website or leave a game in order to be able to figure out what something is, but like, in theory, you could just go into the fight blind, right? Not many people want to, but you could go.
I mean, there's another thing of that's another community barrier of entry, 90% of the time, if you're joining a party finder, that a lot of the toxicity that's going to be coming is if you haven't watched a video.
So
you can create a blind party finder.
You can create your own blind party finder group.
Are you going to get people to join it though?
Hexy does it all the time.
I mean, like a streamer is, you can't. I mean, yes, he's not Mr. Happy Big, but he does have a community of people.
No, but I mean, more than half of his party were people that were literally just pulling into the fight blind, or understanding that there were people in the fight that had never seen it.
Yeah.
And had never watched a video on it. So, I mean, it's, if you market, like, here's the thing, and I'll say this all the time. Words matter. How you use words matters, and what people need to do is they need to read. I know that's a lot to do in a video game. I apologize, but like Party Finder is set up. Party Finder is set up in such a way that it does benefit you to know what you're looking at, right? For the number of parties that Gimbals and I have created that have been, a clear party with no clear understanding as to what chests we're going to get because we just don't care, and people jumping in and going, "Is this a chew chest?" Well, no. There's an unclaimed weekly rewards option that if I wanted a chew chest, I would have selected. And so it's like, it gets one of those things. It's like read. So sometimes the barrier of entry is just people being dumb and not actually reading the tools that are already in place to say whether something is a guaranteed chew chest or not, right?
I would love to poll those people to see if they're like the people that like, oh, this quest isn't voiced, skip.
The voicing quest things bothers me because more so in this game than any other game, it's not "Hail adventurer" or "Hey adventurer" or "Hey important dude in our game" that has like a generic ring that everybody can utilize. Like, you are the warrior of light. You are the center of attention in this story. It is an RPG first, as we've stated in our chat with Wraith. It is an RPG first and an MMO second. So the fact that like people are up in arms about the fact of the lack of voice acted scenes, like until AI phonetics becomes a thing, you're never going to get fully voice acted everything all the time in Final Fantasy, because they want that touch of, "Hey Gibbles, go do this. Hey Kula, go do this." Like it's not, they're using your name in the game.
And I mean, like they've used the exact same like kind of algorithm, I'll say, because I can't think of a better word right now, in like previous games where you can name your character, right? Like Final Fantasy X, the character's Titus, you can name it something different. And every single cutscene in that game and in this game, they don't like leave the name and then in the closed caption like put the name in. Right? They'll word it around. Like every single cutscene you get, it's like our dear friend is what they'll say when they're talking to someone else about you, or they'll say the warrior of light, or they'll just give your selected pronoun from your character creation.
Right.
And in the non-voiced not the non-main story stuff, that's where like the little text bubble will say your name, right? Which is exactly what you're saying. But like I feel like a lot of games will do that too, just in general. It would be weird if every single quest you did in the entire game, nobody ever said your name.
Nobody said your name ever. Yeah, I mean, but like people are like, more voiced cutscenes, and I'm like, sure, but at what cost, right? Like, what do you lose by what personality do you lose in this game by cutting in voice acted cutscenes? So.
Yeah, I know a lot of people. I've actually met a few people who, not a lot. I've met like 2 people who actually would prefer if we were just the adventurer again.
Yeah.
They feel weird being the warrior of light, the savior of the star, killer of gods, stealer of pants,
stealer of pants, deliverer of tea to shops.
Well, I mean, I don't remember what what quest it was. A main story quest where someone was like talking to us, and they said something like the Warrior of Light, Killer of Gods, Slayer of Bahamut,
Leader of every
Stealer of
faction in
Pants.
Skyrim. Yes,
if some stories are to be believed, is what like he said. Like it was, and I think it was a voice line too.
it's I think it's awesome.
But yeah, they wish we would just be like the first like 15 or wait 20 levels, where it was just adventurer. I mean, like even like we didn't really get Warrior of Light until level 50, I think, is like our moniker, right? Even all the way up until Praetorium, no one called us the Warrior of Light. And I feel like they want to call back to that, but I feel like that's someone who is definitely like they like that WoW aesthetic of like we're just some random person in the world. At the same time, it's a weird thing to. I've tried to play WoW, but I bounced off it. That's mostly because I came in so late into it, and I had already played Final Fantasy a bunch, and so like I'm going from a newer MMO and a couple newer MMOs. I played Terra, I played Black Desert, and then I tried to go back and play a really old MMO at this point. It's really old, and I just couldn't get through it. But like you're just some nameless adventurer who, oh hey, I go do this raid and I kill a god in it, but I'm still just some nameless adventurer, you know.
Right.
So
but I mean, like, you build relationships with a lot of these characters, like, so it's just one of those things that like I feel like it would be disingenuous to just call you adventurer all the time. Like I like that they're utilizing they're utilizing character names, because
so I feel everyone is the Warrior of Light. Not everyone technically, like everyone else is when you're playing with someone else in like the stories like that, you're not playing with a Warrior of Light, you're playing with an adventurer. Your friends are just adventurers. It's this weird what's the term, suspension of disbelief that you have to do of like your friend. If me and Cool are standing next to each other in game, in my game and in my game, I'm the Warrior of Light, he's an adventurer friend. He's not a warrior. Like he could be they coined a Warrior of Light because he's created feats, he's done feats, but he's not as he's not the he's not the Warrior of Light, main defender of the Scions, friend to nations. He's an adventurer that gets called in to help out that Warrior of Light all the time, and then vice versa, right? If in Kula's game and I'm standing next to them, I'm just an adventurer, and it's a suspension of disbelief that you have to do, which is, I mean, is like true of any MMO, right? Because like I'm the one who did this thing in this game. Well, so did they, and so did they, and so did they. Right, you have to just kind of be like, you have to kind of like remove that.
Right, and there's no real way to skip that, right? I mean, it's just a part of the game.
Yeah.
That you just kind of have to be a part of and work your way through.
Yeah, that's just it's the thing of any video game, any MMO, any story, right?
Right.
You have to just remove you have to remove the fact that they've technically, like, when it comes to the story and keeping your immersion, you have to remove the fact that everyone is playing through the same thing. When you see another adventurer, like say when you go to an area, right? When you go to, I'm gonna pick somewhere really early in the game. When you go to the Dravanian Forelands for the first time, right, and you're walking through the forest and you're in that town, with in the middle of the Chocobo Forest, and you get to that first town in the Forelands, Tailfeather, and you'd be like, wow, this is so crazy, and I'm here on this quest with Isael and Estinian, and you see someone else like flying away from inside the town. You have to then be like, they're not on the adventure with Isael and Estinian. I am, and they're just an adventurer that's also in the same town as me. That's true for any MMO in the story.
Right. 100%. To kind of bring us back on track, because we've kind of
gotten really off the rails on this one.
Which is fine. We're having a good time, so that's what matters. I think the biggest thing that I think that it's great that that we've been able to play a game where the devs care so much, right? I mean, everything's not perfect, and nothing ever really, is ever going to be absolutely perfect, and you can't please everyone, right? That's the old saying.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things, I think, that that they do a great job of trying to listen. I have high expectations of believing that they are doing something with Glamour come 7.0. It's been a huge request, right? It's been something that they've joked about during live letters of like people saying we want more Glamour plates, and he's been like, we just gave you a bunch. Like, he knows it's a problem. Like, they're aware that this is one of the especially Glamour plates and stuff like that are a big deal. Being able to access your accessory storage for Glamour. Like, there's a ton of stuff that they've said that they want to do. Like I said, we've all voiced our opinion. I think they're holding off. We might hear something maybe in the next few weeks about Glamour plates or something to that effect over the next few weeks. But given that we have JP Fan Fest coming up, that might be where they're releasing it.
They've probably saved the big stuff for JP Fan Fest, I feel.
Yeah, I mean, we'll find out what the last class is. I'm expecting we'll find out what the last class is. I'm guessing it's probably Green Mage or Geomancer. People have said Geomancer, but I think it's going to be Green Mage. The MSQ has kind of pointed in that direction with some of the stuff that it's done, so it's fairly obvious that it's going to be Green Mage.
Time Mage.
They could hit Time Mage. I'm gonna go back in time and change all of the Time Mage things into Green Mage things. Got it. But we'll see some more dev stuff. They've been kind of slowly showing stuff. This is one of the few companies that I honestly feel like they've done a great job of not having spoilers released before they're ready for them to be released. They're like, the community, kind of keeps their eye on things, and we don't see a lot of leaking coming from this team. Which is great. I thoroughly enjoy being able to have this brand new experience. Every time I jump into a game, there's not really a lot spoiled that I haven't read up myself. So it's definitely been nice. But other than that, Bar, did you have anything else to add for tonight?
So I wanted to go back to mistakes that they've learned from, and I wanted to get your idea on one thing that we didn't mention, and that was a change that they added in, or it wasn't in Heavensward. One class had it in Heavensward, but they added it in Stormblood, and that was tank stancing. I mean, like, they sort of had it in Heavensward because of Darkside, and then Paladin had Sword Oath and Shield Oath off rip, but they added the warrior deliverance, the deliverance and defiance, and they set different abilities on those, right? Like, I think it was Inner Beast was the attack for, and then for defiance, and then when you went to deliverance, it was Fell Cleave. I know my spouse, who played during that time as warrior, liked that and actually felt that was missing. But I feel like from a community standpoint, a lot of people were like, oh my god, why'd you add this? We just got rid of cleric stance. Why'd you do this? Kind of thing. I wonder, I don't know when you started playing. I don't know if you went through that.
Get back on the game, Harley. If you want your stances back, then get back on the game.
What did you think about that specific change they did? I don't know if you played during that time.
I did. I played a little bit during that time. I wasn't tanking a lot. I think
So I feel like the tank stances were different than cleric stances.
Not until they give me them back. How about a concession? How about we make Island Sanctuary at level 20, and then we don't bring the stances back.
They almost got back in because of Island Sanctuary, and then bailed once they found out that they had to clear the entire game for it.
We'll just jump skip. When's Harley's birthday? We'll give them the jump skip for their birthday.
March. I mean, like, we could do it right now, but at the same time, like, Harley's character is you're most of the way through Stormblood. I think. I don't think you've finished the Stormblood story.
I'll still jump it. I don't even care.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyways, so here's my take. Like, the stances are great, and yes, it does bring more DPS to the group overall, but I think it diminishes the value of the 8-man party group or the 24-man party group by giving these spaces for tanks to turn off their stance and become more of a DPS role versus a tank role. I think in more content now than in previous content. I think it worked in previous content because a lot of the content in previous time frames were easier to solo tank versus there being a lot more need for your tank swaps. Like, the tank swaps are a little more pivotal in the current time when you're doing 8-man than they were in the past. I know that that's not true for everything, but like especially Savages, like Gibbles can attest to the number of times he swaps his Cardian, that the tank swaps are pivotal to keeping the group alive, especially when there's body checks and double tanks. The tank throws in P10, the double tank swaps in P11.
Yeah, I feel like just in general they've started to, and I feel like it's been there's another mistake that they've learned from, right? But I feel like it's only recently that they've really started to push in and get rid of solo healing and solo tanking to try and push that extra damage, and clear the fights faster, because
or
there's
have
mechanics.
Healer stacks or specific.
Yeah, there's
stacks.
Stacks that the effects specifically target 2 healers. And so if you're solo healing it, all of a sudden there's this like RNG factor of, am I going to get hit twice with this instead? And then you have the tank stance, or not tank stance, tank swaps being more prevalent. So you can't, like, sometimes you can still solo tank it because you're just going to invuln it. And like maybe you're playing warrior and your invulns come up fast enough that you can invuln both, but then that next auto,
situations like P10 are not conducive of things like that.
Yeah. So I feel like they've definitely done a good job in doing that, and especially as someone who plays healer, and then all of a sudden the last ultimate raid, the community goes and be like, healers, what's a healer? All the damage, no healer
teas.
Like it's a cool thing that they did, right? And like understanding that comp, it's a really cool way. And as a healer, I actually find it really interesting and like kind of a challenge and kind of cool to be like, oh, I'm gonna solo heal this. Hell yeah, it's all on me. That's cool, but at the same time, it feels bad to be the healer, not that would be left out of that group because they're solo healing it. And I see a party finder up, I'm like, oh hell yeah, I want to go farm that Lynx, and they have 1 healer slot, and it's the white mage is already in there, and I can't join it. Like as a healer main, like stop making my class unusable. Stop getting rid of my class. It feels bad, man. But like at the same, like you always have to understand, like DPS is king. How do you reduce the amount of damage overall that goes out into a raid? Well, you do more damage. That's the best way. Because if you skip soar, nothing happens.
The greatest part is the greatest part of things, is kind of, that feeling of like, there's an old raid saying like, if you kill the boss early, then you don't have to heal the later mechanics, right? Like, so like, if you heal him 10 mechanics early, then you're saving yourself 10 mechanics of healing. But I think it shows, like when Bard and I run together, from a mitts perspective, because I'm a very mitt heavy tank versus the mitts that don't. Like Bard verbally will be like, oh, I don't have to heal here. Like I literally don't have to heal here because the tanks are actually emitting. The tanks are actually popping their mitts and saving me from having to emit. Or like, oh, that didn't hit as hard as I was expecting because the tanks actually threw out their group mitts. It makes it like. Another instance of this was like Togami joined our static and was like, all right, we're gonna do P10, which is the hardest healing check in the game in the current Savage tier. Like, be prepared. And like 4 or 5 pulls in, Togami was like, are there places that I should be healing? Like, are you picking up all the slack? Like, I feel like I'm not doing what I should be doing. And our other healer was like, our other healer Nelia was like, no, like, this is how we plan. Like, we have planned our mitts in such a way to alleviate a large chunk of the larger damage. And it was something that Nelia, or that Togami wasn't used to, that we had actually planned our mitts out in a way that actually was beneficial to the team versus, just everybody throwing their mitts when they felt like it.
Like I just did P11, right? I was progging a crap out of it. I had I don't even know how long I streamed it 2 nights ago. Saturday night. I went until 2 a.m. just progging P11, and I was a lot of the time because the boss their autos will wreck the tank. There's a ton of damage. I'm a lot of fights I can usually just me healing raid wides will support the tank enough that I don't really have to give them any help, except so on P10 with the towers, I make sure I help the tanks there. In P11, if sometimes if I'm dealing with a paladin and a gunbreaker, their invuln isn't up for either the second or the third tank buster, and I have to throw in some help. But I usually don't have to help with the autos. But for Thornton Unreal is one where you actually have to help because his cleaves hit harder than his tank busters, which is a really interesting thing that they did for that fight in comparison to newer fights. But the P11 I had to throw in as to play Sage, so I'm very mitt oriented because my main abilities are a 10% damage reduction, 10% damage reduction, and stuff, and shields, right? So but throwing in heals to help throwing in the mitts to help my tank, so because I see their health going down to half every 2 seconds from the autos. And then like you were saying, you're very mitt oriented. I got my clear with you the next day and I didn't heal you once. I think I threw in like I guess the raid wides, the raid wide heals usually help. I think I threw in one actually focused heal on you the entire time. So I think I helped. I'll heal up after a tank buster sometimes, but it also depends on the off tank, and so a lot of times the white mage is just gonna Benny you.
But yeah, it's just a difference in play, right? So I may not hit as hard as some other tanks with DPS because I'm more focused on making sure that the group as a whole stays up.
Yeah. But I think that's definitely some game design that I think that they've done really well recently, and that I can think about is that it's the fix I've thought of but in the past was self self-sustain and party sustain has felt too high to me, and that's how you create stuff like the healerless top, right? Because you got Reaper raid sustain, Summoner raid sustain, and then you got Shake It Off and Divine Veil. You create all of this raid, not just self sustain, but raid sustain that these DPS and tanks have, that all of a sudden the heal is pointless. And I was thinking well, you kind of have to get rid of that, but in order to make healers relevant. But we actually doing the current Savage tier specifically, I can see, wait, no, you don't have to. There's mechanically you can create systems where no, you can't one tank, you can't one healer, or no healer the fight. And I feel like that's a really a really creative way that they've worked around that problem, and a really showing of like them learning from their mistakes. And I feel like just the raids just in general, because we talk about how also with balancing the classes, that the classes are generally pretty balanced right now, especially in comparison to like previous expansions, and the raids not being damage heavy but mechanic heavy. You bring the player, not the class. And I feel like those are great lessons that that the dev team has pushed forward as well.
Right. Yeah, 100%.
No bard necessary for accuracy. If you don't know, in A Realm Reborn,
have that accuracy,
and I think in Heavensward too. You had, yeah, and I know 100% you had it in Heavensward, because I was not allowed to raid because I, as a scholar, had melded pure crit, and I got like, we're not letting you in this party, because they looked at my gear and saw I had no accuracy melded. But you could miss in specifically like only in raids. You didn't have this problem in any other content. It was only in raiding. You could miss, and so like you would have a minimum accuracy that you'd had to meld, and then on top of it you would also a lot of times you would run a bard, because bards had a passive, or I think it was a song specifically that allowed them to buff everyone's accuracy. And then you had another thing they learned from was in the same time was the piercing comp, right?
Yeah.
They had a debuff. So like you would want to run a ninja sometimes, because they would give a slashing debuff, so that the boss would take more slashing damage, and that would benefit the tanks and the ninja. And then I think warrior also had it, so you didn't really have to worry about the ninja. But then I think it was dragoon added a piercing debuff, which helped bard and machinist. So you'd run, you like had to make sure you had like that ranged DPS plus a dragoon in order to increase damage output.
Yeah.
I kind of accidentally cycled back right there.
It's all good. It's all good.
A lot of things is all.
But yeah, I think that is gonna probably wrap up for tonight. We got a lot of good information. Interested to see what people have in the comments when we post these videos up in more formal view. We'll as we start getting kind of a larger audience with more comments, we'll start kind of taking a section to talk about our previous episode in the comments posted on it. So if you have stuff you want to talk about it that you missed the episode and you're catching it off the back end, feel free to post a comment on it, and we'll start trying to look at those. So thank you guys for tuning in today. A little bit of housekeeping for today, given that the holidays are upon us for the next couple of weeks. We are looking at the January 5th date as being our next podcast date, given that Christmas is on Monday and New Year's Day is on Monday as well. So our next podcast will be the accessibility podcast with a great Conjured Cow and Blinded Chaos, who are gonna talk to us about disabilities and how games do it well, how they may not do it well, how specifically Final Fantasy does, if there's they make it easier or harder. But I think that one we're going to kind of branch outside of just Final Fantasy and kind of branch into games as a whole. So we can kind of get a good idea. I know there's an accessibility award that the Game Awards releases. I'm interested to kind of talk a little bit about maybe what those games are doing that are getting on that list. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see in another direction. But look forward to that. Other than that, Bard, when are we going to see you next?
Am I going to stream right now? I got to clear P11. I might actually start up right now. I gotta get a P11 clear on my main character, so I might stream in like a minute after this ends, and then tomorrow again I think I'm gonna be, I don't know if I'm gonna be focusing a lot on 14 this week or if I'm gonna be doing some other stuff. I do want to try tanking some stuff this week. We'll see.
Nice. I will be back again tomorrow for our P12 raid session. 12 Prague. We are currently on SC2 A and B to getting to clear. So the core boss here soon to be able to move into part 2. So
I heard part 2 is easier than part 1.
That's what I've heard. So we'll be interested to see what it all looks like. I've heard part 2 has a lot of like, if one player dies, the whole team dies kind of a situation though. So it's like, it is easier, but it's like, it's more body check heavy.
Every fight in this tier.
Well, P12 has moments where you can die and still get back up.
Yeah.
Perfectly fine. Not as body heavy check. But it does have some. The other fights in this tier, P10 and P9, and a little bit of P11 have a lot of body checks. Where if you're not alive, it's gonna screw over your party. So cool. All right. Well, we will talk to you guys when we pick up next. Have a great night.
Hey guys.
Great thing. Okay.